All right, we need to talk about what just happened in federal court in Atlanta. Because if you thought you understood the legal peril Donald Trump is facing, you haven't been paying close enough attention. What unfolded over the last 72 hours has fundamentally altered the landscape of this case. And it all comes down to something nobody saw coming, not the legal experts, not the political insiders, not even Trump's own attorneys. They were caught flat-footed. And now, the entire strategy they've been building for months is in shambles. I'm talking about the Bondi audio. The 47 minutes that have become the most damaging piece of evidence in any Trump prosecution to date. But here's the thing. That's just the beginning. What's happened since those tapes were played in open court has accelerated faster than anyone anticipated. New witnesses are coming forward. Current government officials are flipping. The scope of the investigation has exploded. And the legal team defending the former president is scrambling to contain a crisis that's spiraling out of control. Let me take you through exactly what happened, because this isn't just another development in a long-running legal saga. This is the moment everything changed. Let's start with the recordings themselves. 9 telephone conversations between Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, recorded while she served as his attorney general, made on government-issued secure devices, logged on DOJ servers, backed up automatically through official channels. The defense tried to argue these were fake. Deep fakes, they said, AI manipulation, fabricated evidence from a hostile witness. But then the forensic analysis came back. An expert with 22 years at the NSA examined every file, found zero evidence of manipulation. Zero. The metadata confirmed the dates, the times, the device identity. These recordings are authentic. And what's on them is devastating for the defense. Because on those tapes, you hear Trump's voice, his actual voice, giving direct instructions to his attorney general. Instructions that any reasonable person would recognize as obstruction of justice. Let me read you some of the key exchanges. Transcript of call 4, January 23rd, 2025, 9:14 p.m. From Bondi's DOJ office. Trump says, "You're my attorney general. You can make this Georgia thing go away. That's why I put you there." Bondi responds, "Sir, I can't interfere with an active special counsel investigation." And Trump replies, "Yes, you can. You're in charge. I need you to be a team player here." Put those two statements together. You're my attorney general. You can make this go away. I need you to be a team player. That's not political rhetoric. That's not casual conversation. That's a direct order from a president to his top law enforcement official, instructing him to obstruct a federal investigation. And the pattern continues across multiple calls. Call 2, Trump asks Bondi to slow down the Atlanta grand jury. Slow down, meaning delay, hinder, impede. Call 5, Trump references an $840,000 payment to a Nevada LLC and says, "Your office doesn't need to look at that." Doesn't need to look at that, meaning ignore, overlook, don't investigate. Call 7, Trump explicitly says, "This stays between us." No memos. No memos. That's consciousness of guilt. That's someone who knows they're doing something wrong and wants to make sure there's no paper trail. Except there is a paper trail now, because Bondi was recording everything, every conversation, every demand, every attempt to obstruct justice. And she brought it all to the special counsel. Now, I want to pause here and address something. Some people are going to say, this is just politics. This is the deep state. This is a witch hunt. I get it. That's the narrative Trump has been pushing for years, and it's worked. It's mobilized his base. It's created an alternative reality where every legal action against him is part of a vast conspiracy. But here's the problem with that narrative. The recordings exist. They're real. And the evidence they contain is overwhelming. You cannot spin your way around your own voice telling your attorney general to obstruct justice. You cannot explain away direct orders to interfere with federal investigations. The tapes are the tapes. And no amount of political rhetoric changes what's on them. But here's where it gets worse for Trump. Since those recordings were played in open court, something remarkable has happened. New witnesses are coming forward. Not reluctant witnesses. Not people who had to be subpoenaed and dragged into court. People who are volunteering. People who are approaching the special counsel and saying, "I have information. I saw something. I heard something. And I want to talk. I've been tracking this in real time." And the number of cooperators is growing by the day. Initially, it was 5 co-defendants in active plea negotiations. Then that number went to 8. Now it's over a dozen. And they're not just low-level staffers. These are senior officials, people who were in the room, people who were on the calls, people who witnessed the pressure campaign firsthand. And they're all saying the same thing. Trump was directly involved. He was giving orders. He was making demands. He was trying to obstruct the investigation. And he wasn't subtle about it. He was explicit. He was insistent. He was threatening. That's what the witnesses are telling prosecutors. And now that they're cooperating, they're bringing their own evidence, their own emails, their own memos, their own text messages, their own recordings, potentially. The scope of this case has exploded exponentially. Let me give you a specific example. There's a current deputy attorney general, still serving in the Justice Department, still working in government, but now cooperating with the investigation into her former boss who appointed her former boss who she served loyally for months. But when she heard the Bondi tapes, something clicked. She realized the full extent of what had happened. She realized the pressure campaign went beyond just Bondi. It touched everyone in the chain of command. And she realized she had a choice. She could stay silent and risk being implicated herself, or she could come forward and tell the truth. She chose to come forward, and she's not alone. The judge's order this week listed 19 individuals who must preserve all communications effective immediately. 19. That's not a small number. That's an entire network of people who are now under scrutiny. And 3 of them are current cabinet members. 2 are sitting senators. 5 are former White House counsels. These are not peripheral figures. These are the most powerful people in the government. And they're all caught up in this investigation because they all had conversations with Trump or Bondi about the obstruction campaign. And now those conversations are being examined. Every email, every text, every phone call, every meeting. All of it is potentially discoverable. All of it is potentially criminal. Now, I want to talk about the legal strategy here because what the special counsel is doing is brilliant. They're building a case from the bottom up, starting with the co-defendants, flipping them with immunity deals, getting them to testify, using their testimony to pressure the next level, and keeping going until they reach the top. Bondi is the crown jewel of that strategy. She's not just a witness. She's the witness. She was in the room. She was on the phone. She has the recordings. There's no one who can contradict her except Trump himself. And he can't testify because he'd incriminate himself. So the defense is left with attacking her credibility. And they're trying. Oh, they're trying. They're calling her a traitor, a deep state operative, a disgruntled former employee who flipped to save herself. And maybe some of that is true. Maybe Bondi did have exposure. Maybe she was protecting herself. That's what immunity deals are for. They incentivize cooperation. They give witnesses a reason to come forward. But here's the thing. Even if Bondi is the worst person in the world, even if she's completely cynical and self-interested, that doesn't change what's on the tapes. The tapes exist. The tapes are real, and the tapes contain Trump's voice directing her to obstruct justice. That's not her testimony. That's the evidence. And you can't cross-examine a recording. You can attack the witness. But the audio speaks for itself. The defense knows this. That's why they're so desperate to get the recordings excluded. They filed an emergency motion to suppress, denied within 4 hours. They argued executive privilege. The judge ruled against them. They argued the recordings were illegally obtained. The judge said the metadata confirms they were made on government equipment and properly preserved. They argued chain of custody. The judge pointed to the forensic analysis that shows 0 manipulation. Every argument they've made has been rejected, and every rejection has made the prosecution stronger. Because now the evidence is in the record. It's admissible, and the jury's going to hear it. Now, let's talk about the judge, because her role in this has been crucial. She's been on the federal bench for 23 years. She's seen a lot of cases. But she said something from the bench on Tuesday that sent shockwaves through the courtroom. She said, "In 23 years on the federal bench, I have never seen evidence of this magnitude." A former attorney general under oath providing recordings of a sitting president directing her to obstruct justice. This court takes that with utmost seriousness. That's not a judge who's going to be lenient. That's a judge who's going to follow the law. And the law says the evidence comes in. The law says the tapes are admissible. The law says the jury gets to hear what's on them. Now, I want to address something important. There's been a lot of talk about executive privilege, and I understand why. It's a legitimate constitutional doctrine. It protects the president's ability to get candid advice from his advisors. It ensures that the executive branch can function effectively. But here's the problem with Trump's argument. Executive privilege doesn't protect criminal activity. It doesn't shield obstruction of justice. It doesn't cover conspiracies to interfere with federal investigations. And the crime fraud exception makes that crystal clear. When communications are made in furtherance of a crime, they lose their privileged status. That's the law. It's been the law for decades, and it applies here. Wasn't seeking legal advice. He wasn't discussing policy. He was directing his attorney general to obstruct justice. That's not privileged. That's criminal. And the evidence is going to come in. Let me also address something that's been bothering me. There are people out there who still think this is all going to go away. They think Trump will find a way out. They think the Supreme Court will save him. They think the system will fail. I understand that skepticism. I really do. We've seen Trump dodge accountability before. We've seen him escape consequences that would have destroyed anyone else. But this feels different. This feels like the moment the law finally catches up. And here's why. This isn't about politics. This isn't about the deep state. This is about evidence, real evidence, physical evidence. Recordings of the defendant himself committing a crime. You can't spin that. You can't explain it away. You can't make it disappear. It's there. It's real. And the jury is going to hear it. Now, let's look at the timeline going forward, because things are moving fast, faster than anyone anticipated. Monday, June 22nd, status conference. Both sides must provide updated witness and exhibit lists. That's going to be huge. We're going to see exactly who the prosecution is calling, and we're going to see what evidence they plan to introduce. Tuesday, June 23rd, Trump's executive privilege motion is due. His team is going to make every argument they can. They're going to try to convince the judge that the recordings should be excluded. I don't think it's going to work. The law is clear. The crime fraud exception applies. But we'll see. Wednesday, June 24th. Deadline for Trump to produce all communications with Bondi from her tenure as AG. That's going to be massive. Thousands of pages of documents, emails, memos, texts, phone records, meeting notes. If there's anything in there that contradicts his defense, the prosecution is going to find it, and they're going to use it. Friday, June 26th. Special counsel's response to the privilege motion is due. They're going to lay out in detail why the recordings should come in. They're going to cite the law. They're going to cite the facts. They're going to cite the forensic analysis. And they're going to argue that executive privilege doesn't protect criminal activity. Then there's the preliminary hearing on July 8th. Bondi's testimony, public testimony, under oath, cross-examined by Trump's attorneys. That's going to be the moment of truth. Will she hold up under pressure? I think she will. She's been preparing for months. She has immunity. She has nothing to lose. And she has the recordings to back her up. The cross-examination is going to be brutal, but she's ready. She knew what she was doing when she made those recordings. She knew she was building a case. She knew she was protecting herself, and she's going to be a devastating witness. But here's the part that should concern everyone, regardless of politics, regardless of your opinion of Trump or Bondi or any of the players in this drama. The method Bondi used is now a template. Any attorney general, any cabinet member, any official with access to the president can do what she did. Record everything. Wait for the right moment, then use it. That changes the fundamental nature of executive branch operations. No president can speak candidly if every conversation is potentially recorded. No advisor can give honest counsel if their words might later be used against them. The chilling effect on governance is real and it's permanent. Once this precedent is established, it can't be undone. Future presidents will operate in a fog of suspicion. They'll communicate through intermediaries. They'll avoid putting anything in writing. They'll restrict access and limit discussions. That's not how effective government works. That's how paranoid government works. And we're all going to live with the consequences. I want to explore that a little deeper, because I think this is the most underreported aspect of the whole thing. Everyone is focused on Trump. Everyone is focused on the criminal exposure. And that's understandable. It's dramatic. It's historic. But the long-term implications are even more significant. Think about what this means for the presidency itself. The office is already under immense strain. Polarization has made governance almost impossible. Trust in institutions is at historic lows. And now you have a situation where the president's own cabinet members are recording him secretly, without his knowledge, and using those recordings against him. That's not accountability. That's something else entirely. That's a breakdown of the basic trust that makes government possible. And once that trust is gone, it's almost impossible to restore. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're the next president. You've just been elected. You're trying to assemble a team. You need people you can trust, people who will give you honest advice, people who will tell you when you're making a mistake. But now you have to worry. Is that person wearing a wire? Are they recording our conversations? Are they building a case against me? That paranoia infects everything. It changes the way you communicate. It changes the way you make decisions. It changes the way you govern. And it's not just the president, it's everyone in the administration, cabinet members recording each other, staff members recording their bosses, a culture of suspicion and betrayal that undermines any possibility of effective leadership. That's where we're heading. That's the world Bondi's recordings are creating. And we can't pretend it's just about Trump. It's about the future of the presidency itself. Now, I want to talk about the broader political implications, because this case is going to have a massive impact on the 2028 election. There's no getting around that. Trump is still the dominant figure in the Republican Party. He's still the presumptive nominee. He's still the person everyone is rallying around. But this case changes the calculus. If Trump is convicted, if he's facing prison time, it becomes almost impossible for him to run effectively. He'll be focused on his legal defense. He'll be consumed by the case. He won't be able to campaign. He won't be able to raise money. He won't be able to do the things a candidate needs to do to win. And that creates a huge opening for other candidates, some of whom are already positioning themselves, some of whom are already making moves behind the scenes. Ron DeSantis is waiting in the wings. Nikki Haley is keeping her options open. Mike Pence is trying to figure out his path forward. All of them see what's happening. All of them are preparing for a scenario where Trump is forced out of the race. And that scenario is looking more likely by the day. But there's another scenario, one that's even more chaotic. What if Trump is convicted but still runs? What if he campaigns from prison? What if he uses his legal jeopardy as a rallying cry? We've seen him do it before. He's always been able to turn adversity into advantage. He's always been able to mobilize his base by playing the victim. And a conviction might actually strengthen him with his core supporters. They'll see it as proof of the deep state conspiracy. They'll see it as persecution. They'll rally around him even more. That's the nightmare scenario for the Republican establishment. A convicted felon as their nominee, a candidate who can't campaign, a candidate who might be behind bars on election day. That would be a disaster, not just for the party, but for the country. The constitutional crisis would be immense. The political instability would be unprecedented, and the damage to American democracy would be incalculable. Let me be clear about something. I'm not predicting that outcome. I'm just laying out the possibilities. This is a fluid situation. Things are changing every day. New evidence is emerging. New witnesses are coming forward. The legal landscape is shifting, and no one can say with certainty how this ends. But I can tell you what I'm watching. I'm watching the co-defendant negotiations. If 3 more flip with their own recordings, that's a game changer, because that establishes a pattern. It's not just Bondi, it's multiple people, multiple witnesses, multiple recordings, all saying the same thing. Trump was directing obstruction from the top. And that's almost impossible to defend against. I'm watching the current DOJ officials now cooperating. If people still in government are testifying against Trump, that's the deep state narrative coming true. Or career officials choosing country over party, depending on your perspective. Either way, it's devastating for the defense. I'm watching the judge's patience. It's nearly gone. One more threatening post about Bondi, we could see detention motions. Rare, but possible. But if Trump violates his pre-trial release conditions, the judge could revoke his bond, could send him to jail pending trial. That would be unprecedented. But it's not impossible. Not with this judge. Not with this evidence. And I'm watching the public reaction, because that matters too. This case is playing out in the court of public opinion as much as in the courtroom. The prosecution knows that. The defense knows that. That's why Trump is posting so aggressively. That's why he's trying to control the narrative. He knows that if public opinion turns against him, it puts pressure on the legal system. It makes it harder for prosecutors to do their job. It makes it harder for judges to be impartial. It's a strategy, a cynical strategy, but a strategy nonetheless. And it's worked before. The question is whether it works this time. Whether the evidence is just too overwhelming, whether the recordings are just too damning, whether the public finally sees the reality of what happened. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll be watching, and I'll be breaking it down for you every step of the way. Now, I want to talk about something that's been bothering me, something that doesn't get enough attention. The fact that Bondi was recording these conversations while serving as Attorney General. That's not a small thing. She was the top law enforcement officer in the country. She had a duty to uphold the law. She had a duty to protect the integrity of the Justice Department. And instead, she was secretly recording her boss. It raises profound questions about her conduct, about her judgment, about her motives. And the defense is going to hammer on that. They're going to say she was disloyal. She was scheming. She was building a case against the president from the very beginning. And maybe some of that is true. Maybe Bondi was never really loyal. Maybe she was always looking for a way out. Maybe she was protecting herself from day one. I don't know. I wasn't in the room. I don't know what was in her heart, but I do know this. Whatever her motives were, the tapes are real. Whatever her intentions, the evidence exists. And whatever her character, Trump's voice on those recordings is clear. He was directing obstruction. He was pressuring her to interfere with investigations. He was violating the law. And that's what this case is really about. Not Bondi's character, not her motives, not her judgment, but Trump's conduct, his actions, his words, his attempts to obstruct justice. That's the issue. And no amount of attacking Bondi changes that. Let me also address the defense's argument that this was just normal political discussion. That presidents talk to their AGs about pending cases all the time, that there's a legitimate role for the White House in DOJ decision-making, and to some extent, that's true. There's a long tradition of presidential involvement in Justice Department matters. But there are limits. And those limits are crossed when the president tries to pressure his attorney general to obstruct investigations, to drop cases, to ignore evidence, to slow down grand juries. That's not normal. That's not legitimate. That's obstruction. And that's what the evidence shows. The tapes show Trump crossing that line repeatedly, explicitly, knowingly. He knew what he was doing. He knew it was wrong. And he did it anyway. Let's think about the defense strategy going forward, because it's going to be fascinating to watch. They have to make a choice. They can attack Bondi relentlessly, try to destroy her credibility, argue she's a liar, a traitor, a deep state operative. That might work with some jurors. People who are already skeptical of the government, people who are already inclined to believe in conspiracies. But it might backfire. Because if you attack Bondi too aggressively, you risk making the jury sympathize with her. You risk making the prosecution's narrative more compelling. You risk looking like bullies. And the other option is to admit the tapes are real, but argue they don't prove obstruction. Argue that Trump was just expressing frustration, just venting, just trying to get his attorney general to do her job. That's a harder argument to make because the tapes are so explicit. But it's the more credible argument. It acknowledges the evidence while minimizing its significance. It says, yes, Trump said these things, but he didn't mean them literally. He was just talking. He wasn't committing a crime. That's a tough sell, but it's better than pretending the tapes don't exist. Now, I want to address the elephant in the room, the timing. Why did Bondi wait so long to come forward? Why did she stay in her job for months while secretly building a case against the president? And then why did she resign abruptly in April, only to get immunity 2 months later and start cooperating? That looks suspicious. It looks like she was planning this from the beginning. It looks like she was waiting for the right moment, the right deal, the right opportunity. And the defense is going to exploit that. They're going to say Bondi was never loyal. She was always scheming. She was always looking for a way to protect herself. And they're going to use that to undermine her credibility. But here's the thing. Even if all of that is true, even if Bondi is the most cynical, self-interested, scheming person in the world, the tapes are still real. The tapes still exist. And the tapes still contain Trump's voice directing her to obstruct justice. That's what it comes down to. Not Bondi's character, not her motives, not her timing, but the evidence. And the evidence is overwhelming. I also want to talk about something that's been largely overlooked. The $2, $3 million in transfers that Bondi was directed to ignore. That's new. That's different from the original $4, $8 million scheme. And it doubles the scope of the financial misconduct allegations. The filing notes that Bondi provided financial records showing these transfers. Money that was moved through shell companies. Money that was directed to state officials. Money that was part of the obstruction campaign. And that's going to be a key part of the prosecution's case because it shows the financial motive. It shows what Trump was trying to protect. It shows why he was so insistent that Bondi drop the investigation. It wasn't just about the election challenges, it was about money. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, money that was being funneled through shady channels. Money that was going to people who were supposed to be impartial officials. Money that was corrupting the electoral process. And Bondi has the records, the financial records, the emails, the memos, the receipts. And she's turned them all over to the special counsel. So where do we go from here? Let me give you my honest assessment. This case is going to trial. I don't see a plea deal happening. Trump is not the type to plead guilty. He's not the type to admit defeat. He's going to fight. He's going to take his chances with the jury. He's going to hope for a hung jury. He's going to hope for an appellate court to save him. He's going to hope for anything except accepting responsibility. And that means the trial will happen. And when it does, the recordings will be the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. The jury will hear Trump's voice directing his attorney general to obstruct justice. They'll hear the demands, the pressure, the threats. They'll hear it all. And then they'll have to decide, was this obstruction or was it just politics? I think the answer is clear. But juries are unpredictable. They can surprise you. They can see things differently than you expect. And that's what makes this case so compelling. It's not a foregone conclusion. It's not guaranteed. It's a fight. And it's going to be a fight until the very end. I want to leave you with this, regardless of how this turns out, regardless of your politics, regardless of your feelings about Trump or Bondi or any of the other players. This case matters. It matters because it's about the rule of law. It matters because it's about whether anyone is above the law, even the president, even a former president, even someone with immense power and influence. The recordings show us what happens when power goes unchecked, when leaders believe they can do whatever they want, when they think the law doesn't apply to them. And that's why this case is so important, not just for Trump, not just for this moment, but for the future, for the principle that no one is above the law, that accountability is real, that justice is blind. That's what's at stake here. And that's what makes this story worth following. I'm going to be covering every development, every filing, every hearing, every testimony. You're going to want to stay tuned because this is history. This is happening right now, and you need to understand it. The stakes are too high to look away. The implications are too significant to ignore. So keep watching, keep reading, keep paying attention. And I'll keep breaking it down for you. I'll keep telling you what's really going on, not the spin, not the propaganda, not the political talking points, but the truth, the evidence, the reality of what's happening in that courtroom. Because that's what matters. That's what this is all about. And that's what I'm here to deliver. Thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging. And I'll see you in the next update.